Hi, welcome to Car and Mechanical, and this is this week's top eBay picks. There has been a little bit of a gap, I'm afraid, as I've been working on the other cars and getting bits for the RX-7, but we're going to dive straight back into things, and in these videos we look at the interesting cars of eBay. So you've seen this car before, but you've seen this car when I looked at this listing where it sold for £3,600. Now since it's been purchased, because it's for a different seller, and they are selling it for nearly 3 times as much for £9,000. So this is a complete flip, and I just found this is really interesting. That I thought someone was going to buy this and actually try to do something with it and with the parts, but to me this blatantly seems like someone has seen an opportunity to try and make some money. I mean, fair enough, it is what some of this video is about. So I think basically they've bought the car, they've cliff noted the information a little bit better, they've presented it a bit more. They said that they were going to wrap the car in carbon fibre. That's ridiculously expensive. I've looked into making carbon fibre at home, and you can make like little bits and pieces for 20, 30, 40, 50 quid. I could maybe make an intake box for like £100. To wrap an entire car in carbon fibre would cost a fortune and take an incredible amount of skill. But there you go, this one's back up for sale for £9,000 this time, so you know, if you fancy finishing this off, I'm not going to say grab yourself a bargain, but I did say at 3,000 or so it probably wasn't the worst purchase in the world. At 9,000 still wet. At 9,000 absolutely steer clear. Actually, just on that Zonda as well, I remember seeing a number plate for it, and I'd looked up the type of car it was based on before. So if I put this into your car parts, that G707 XNK, is it a Zonda? Is it registered as anything else? It's a Ford Granada. And I think when you last look at it on a DVLA website, it's not been MOT'd in a long time. So checking in on one of the cars that I followed in the last video, this was the Honda Civic EF, and I said I thought for 700 or so that would be good, maybe up to 1,000. And this one went for £770. Probably a good purchase for someone, especially with the weight and the power potential these have with a B series, just to make them really quick, nice little cars. So if I didn't take on certain other projects, something like that might appeal to me in the future. So the first car we're looking at this week is this Audi A3 3.2 litre Quattro. This caught my attention because these are almost an S3 in sort of essence. They're the VR6 engine. I quite like them. They're a Quattro A3. These would be actually pretty quick and probably quite a lot of fun to drive. You could almost look at it like a budget R32 as such, which is a weird way to flip it to Audi, but that's kind of what it is. Now, this has had some work done to it, and this is where I start to get suspicious. So there's bits of bodywork that have been done all over. You could lazily patch spray these things in 20 minutes and make it look better than it is. That warning light, it's either handbrake. That warning light hopefully is just a handbrake, but what I don't get is why they're trying to shift this on and why no one's bidding on it. This is either a potential bargain for someone, or there's something going on with this that they're not willing to share. If we go down to the description, we get this nice piece of lovely wording which says, here we have one of the best cars ever built, and this is supplied with full service history. Well, service history doesn't matter if it's not going to pass the next MOT. Mechanically and structurally excellent. Bodywork has been rubbed and rust treated. So first warning here, we know that it's had rust and that's been dealt with. It's in primer at the moment. Primer is porous, it's not going to seal the bodywork off, and if it rains at all, anytime since this has been primed, it will rust. I know this from work I did on my previous car where I primed it, left it overnight, it rained, things came up, come the next week I had rust that had come through, I needed to rub it all back, re-rust treat it and go again. So this worries me. The other thing is we're coming up close to the MOT date for this. So the MOT expiry is in September 2018. This makes me think there's something up with the car that thinks it can't pass the MOT, or it actually is a bargain and it looks okay. Bit of a hint there, it might not be being used. That appears to be some rust on the discs. So that can happen over a weekend or so, or you know, sometimes it just happens over time of not being used. So always something to be maybe a little cautious of. Okay, car number 2 is this Porsche 944. It's a 1987, and it's not as bad as it initially looks. In fact, when I started watching this one earlier, getting the video ready, it was at about £200. It's already had an activity on it, and it's quite interesting. We go through it, we see it's got no wheels on there at the moment, or I think they're supplied with the wheels underneath. I think that's the 2.5 engine. And the car doesn't look too bad in principle. It's been undersealed. It appears to be in primer. It's got the paperwork and apparently it runs, or it was a good runner when it was last being used. And I don't know if this is a case of just putting it back together or if there's something that's being held back here. But I think this looks quite nice. I'm curious on the price though. So as I mentioned, I saw it earlier and I think it was about the 250 mark when I hit watch on it, and it's already getting a bit of attention, so it is kind of interesting that these 944s are starting to go up in price more. My red 924 I paid £500 for. Well, I did get a good deal on that a year or so ago. Yeah, it's interesting. This one's just listed as spares and repairs. We don't really know what's up with it. Could be a bit of a flyer. I think Porsches, they can have electrical issues when they are a bit old. You know the situation with mine if you watch any of my videos that I need to go through and to rewire it. I'm interested that this has seen such good money already. So it'll be interesting to see what this one does finish to, and we can come back and look at that in the next video. Okay, car number 3. I thought after we looked at a Ford Granada that's dressed up as a Pagani Zonda, let's have a look at a Ford Granada. So one will cost you £9,000 and this one's probably going to cost you less than £900. But what is interesting with these, the owner's trying to sell it at the moment for £1,750. But what's interesting with these older Fords are starting to sort of gain a bit of speed, get a bit of attention in terms of the pricing and what people are looking to pay for them. It just comes down to the kind of the classic thing again that people do like them. The other thing is they're rear-wheel drive, and there's sort of a lot of attention to people going for kind of rear-wheel drive cars as sort of cheap drifter cars or cheap performance cars. We'll put this one on watch and we'll see what that does. Hopefully eBay doesn't clear too many out of my listings or the seller doesn't pull it. This has got just under 2 days left and there's a reserve on it. He's got $1,750 in the window. I'm not sure it's the cleanest example, but if you do go through eBay, then they do seem to be selling for quite a bit of money. Okay, the fourth car. Now, this seems to happen to all of the cars that I've chose for this video. They've just suddenly jumped up and people seem to have gained attention on them. I found this one, initially it was at £1,000. It jumped up to £1,500, at which point I shared it to a friend, sort of say it was interesting. And it seems to have jumped up a couple more times tonight already. Now, what is quite interesting with this one is I think it potentially is one of those cars that, as it's been mentioned, it says it's 95% done. And it's got an MOT. I think it's quite smart. And it's a Mercedes C43 AMG. So I think this is an AMG back when AMG meant AMG rather than when AMG meant you could put a badge on your car and it means a trim level. So I'm quite a fan of wagons. I think that this looks quite good. I think it lists at about 300 horsepower and it's had quite a bit of work done to it. In fact, we'll go down to have a look at it in a minute. When this was at sort of 1,500 when I was looking at it earlier, I thought if this ends for a couple of thousand, that's going to be a bargain for someone. I didn't expect to see the price go up so quickly. I'm going to guess that this is going to finish for about 5,000 or so, seeing as it's at 2,750 already. So this one's a going concern. It's got an MOT on it until January next year, so that's always good to see. It's had some care taken of it, so it's been wax oiled underneath, so it's been given some rust protection. It's had quite a few different bits and pieces done to it, and I like the fact that they're saying it's 95% complete, and sometimes that screamed out to me, like the Audi at the beginning of the video, that there's a 5% a lot for a car to need to be sorted. But the 5% here is that there's a bit of rubbing on the back, so maybe the dampers or the springs are a bit worn out. It needs a bit more touching up. It looks good in the pictures, but we all know what that's like. Cars photograph better than they actually look in real life. And that it might need a few small interior bits addressing. I don't think this is going to be bargain of the century by any sorts, but with the prices that an AMG Mercedes could potentially command in the future, or just quite a nice fun car, be interesting to see what that does finish for. I think they've got it listed down there that it's the V8 engine with 300 horsepower. Okay, and the last car number 5. This is a car I've owned previously. I've not owned a 2.8 litre Quattro like this was. I had a 1.9 litre TDI with a bit of tuning on it around 155 horsepower. But the Audi A4 B5, I wonder if they're starting to be a little bit underappreciated and if good examples are going to start dropping off the road. And rather than being an investment, I think that these are probably a bit of a bargain. The 2.8 litre Quattro. I think it's got about 190 horsepower. You've got all-wheel drive, and they're about 1400 kilos. So just bear in mind that my 176 horsepower A4 Advance are probably about 1700 to 1750 kilos. I will get it weighed at some point, but 1400 kilos Quattro all-wheel drive, less than £1,000. I think that this is quite a good bargain. Now, what are you trading off versus buying a B6? I'm not going to say that the build quality is worse, but I think you can notice a difference in the quality of the plastics and everything that you've got inside. The B5 is a lot more basic. That probably partly explains the weight. There's a lot less bits and pieces to play around with. You've got twin zone climate control. You've got a more basic stereo. There's basically less buttons and knobs and everything, but it's a lot more simple. So in one respect, it's probably less to need to repair. So if we go around this one, it's got some arch problems. I wouldn't worry about that too much. There's actually companies on eBay that specialise in selling Audi arches for like £100 painted delivered in any colour, or they certainly do for the B6. It wouldn't surprise me if they do it for the B5. Now, this has got a couple of days left. This is one of those potential bargain cars as well, because it's all the way up in Scotland, which means that less people are willing to go and fetch it, but you could perhaps go and jump on a train to go and get this. The other thing that makes this a potentially good purchase is that one of the previous owners of it's had the current owners had it for the last 16 years before it passed to another family member, and I think that that's kind of something that tells you that it's been looked after and loved, and that the expenses that are needed with it, or just the way that the car has been used, has resulted in it, you know, not needing to have much done to it. I think this B5 A4 could be a good purchase. We'll see what this one finishes to as well. But if someone snapped that up for £800, you could have a really fun year of trouble-free motoring, I would expect. And that's it for this week's video. So fairly interesting that Zonda came up again. I didn't expect to see that. I now think we're going to see that trade hands, and maybe the price will drop, or maybe someone will actually do something with it. It'll be interesting to see what some of these cars finish for. I think I've got more on watch than the last video, so hopefully not too many of those drop off. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more like it, please remember to subscribe. If you've got any comments or feedback, please leave them in the comment section down below. And more than anything, thank you for watching.